Brian Gizem. Did I pronounce it right?
Correct.
Okay,
Thank you,
good.
Sylvia.
He's a senior IP management consultant at Brandstock, which is a leading service provider for IP assets for companies around the world. So tell us your story, your tech talk.
So we're going to talk about benchmarking today, and going to try and keep the data a little bit to a minimum because we've seen a lot of data today already, although we agree on the importance, definitely. So first of all, the question that I would ask is, what is benchmarking? People have different understanding of it and so on. We're going to talk today more on the intellectual property side, and we're going to focus on benchmarking according to the market itself, so the outside the external aspect. And really what we're talking about is getting transparency, gathering data, getting transparency. What am I paying today? What am I getting for what I'm paying? And who am I paying it to, right? And then I want to look and see what's the guy next to me doing, and does that make sense? Okay, so we can go back to the example and look at, you were looking at your Dr. Pepper, for example. We can take similar examples, bananas or something. But at the end of the day, I can get a 50% cost reduction if I'm paying $10 for a banana. It sounds great, but I'm still paying $5 for bananas. So it doesn't really make a great deal unless you really love bananas. So, we need to keep that in mind as well. Okay, so we're going to look at the three exercises, like we said. And the first question we come up with is usually, what's your relationship with the outside counsel? So when we're talking about the foreign counsel, intellectual property, all of those agents all around the world that do our filings and our renewals and our patent drafting and whatnot. And the question usually gets answered with, yes, we have good relationships and we don't really want to bother them too much. We're going okay. But when you dive a little bit deeper, you figure out that there's some key relationships. And these key relationships tend to be managed proactively quite well. And people have a feeling of getting good value from these relationships. However, there are many others that may be less significant on a case-by-case basis, but altogether they add up and cause cost and cause inefficiencies as well. So when you look at that, and in some cases there may be even relationships where people say, well, actually I'd like to get out of that relationship. So on the surface things seem okay, but when you dive deeper, it tends to be a different situation. So we're going to look at some common challenges as well that we come across typically. And really here we're looking at why you would even do a benchmarking. So there are some goals, and it depends on the company. We have to align them with the company goals. So some people will be more focused on cost reduction, and there we're getting into transparency and figuring out what we're paying today. Then the next step would be looking at comparing that to the market and seeing, what's my neighbor paying, what are they getting for the same money, competitors, or indeed people with similar IP portfolios, etc. And then we also look at quality. People often start the conversation, yes, but we can't touch these foreign counsel because the quality is important, and if we disturb that, what happens, and so on. And really, we have to figure out how to measure the quality. And it's a little bit difficult, but it's possible to look at it with a little bit of quantitative and a bit of qualitative as well. And essentially, you're looking at appropriate quality, is what we always say, relevant quality. So we don't necessarily want to exclude using top-tier name brand firms for particular activities and only go with the lowest cost. We want to also look at, for example, if I'm doing a trademark renewal, do I really need a name brand law firm doing that? Are they adding value to that? Probably not. However, if I have a key market and I'm doing a searches, clearing, and a filing project for a new brand in that market, then with it maybe a lot of risk behind it, a lot of costs if things go wrong, then I may want to mitigate that risk and pay a premium. And this is perfectly legitimate then. I get my value add and I'm happy. The other topic we talked about earlier a little bit was consolidation. And when we do the benchmark, we look at who am I paying these fees to and what are they doing. And often what happens is you inherit portfolios. You also may buy them, you inherit them, and the integration happens to some degree, but perhaps the foreign counsel network has not been integrated properly. So you end up with duplication, which of course hinders volume pricing agreements in the procurement side, but also causes inefficiencies for the IP team. They have to manage those relationships, and there are more of them, which makes them more difficult to manage, more difficult to invest time in. more difficult to get a return on. In addition, there are, of course, admin activities in the background, invoices and so on. More invoices to more agents and so on causes more work as well. So that's also a topic. Okay. So some figures here. I promised to keep it brief. So basically looking at the inflated official fees. We talk about official fees quite a lot because they tend to be ignored because these are the fees charged by the Patent and Trademark Office around the world via the Foreign Counsel. And they are sometimes marked up. There are currency conversions involved. We have to keep an eye on that and ensure the rates are fair and appropriate. Now, this is difficult, of course, if you don't have access to the official fees in those. And some of them are quite easy to access. Some of them are more like a black hole. So really, that's an important part, and it accounts for maybe, I would say, a third almost of the savings potential when we do a benchmarking. So really, really important topic. And you see on some of the data here, they can be inflated quite a lot. So in absolute terms, almost $1,000 in some countries. And of course, there are the usual suspects there. That mightn't be too surprising. But here on this chart, we see some that are a little maybe more surprising. The variations in the fees, in the hourly rates here in this example. And these are, in Europe, for example, in China, there are still significant variations. So there is a lot of savings potential is the message, They also like to increase the fees quite a lot in some countries. So that's also a point to take out of. If they're being marked up and then they're increased by 100% by the PTO, then of course the markup in absolute terms is also going to be significant. So it's also something to keep an eye on. There's little you can do about the PTO increasing fees really, but I mean, you can be aware of that and adjust your plans accordingly. Little example here of a fashion company, Italian fashion company, surprise, surprise, that we did a benchmarking with. And this is a multi-brand company who had a decentralized management internally for their different brands. They did the benchmarking project and then figured out that they had law firms around the world that were charging them different prices for the different brands. So the same law firm charging $100 for brand X, $150 for brand Y, and $120 for brand Z. Obviously completely crazy, but nobody had visibility into this. So they centralized their management of the brands, they negotiated the rates, they got their volume pricing agreements based on the total portfolio, and consolidated, eliminating that problem and having visibility in the future so that they don't have that issue. Okay. So having said all that, we have to look at how we actually do a benchmarking and get a good result. So as with many things, good things come in threes. So we're going to stick to 3 steps for good omen. And the first one is gathering the data. So to get that transparency, we first of all need to gather the data. This is, of course, hard slog, but we have to do it. We're gathering information on all of the IP activities from filings, hourly rates, trademarks. The official fees, of course, need to be in there as well. What am I getting charged? It doesn't matter what the official fee is. It matters what I'm actually getting charged today. And we need to look at, of course, the currency effect there as well. The second step is then, of course, looking at that and comparing it to the market data. So what is everybody else paying? Because again, just because I negotiated 20 or 30 or 40% discount does not mean that's a good result. So I need to look at what similar people are paying for similar firm or even the same firm. So ideally, it's nice to be able to say, I have firm X in Venezuela. They are charging me so and so much for trademark renewal. What are they charging my competitor or the other guy with a similar size portfolio? That's what I really want to know. Because then I know if I'm higher, average, or lower on this scale of the fees. So the third step is then actually negotiating with all of these foreign counsel. Best to have the market data to be able to leverage that in negotiation. And then locking in the fees. Traditionally, people would lock them in for 1 to maybe 3 years. The trend nowadays is to lock them in for more like 3, 4, 5 years. And also review the invoices on a regular basis. So here we say quarterly, but you can choose that. And you have the data on the official fees, on the foreign counsel fees, and you need to audit them then to check that you're getting actually charged what you should be and what you negotiated in the end. So, yeah, having said that, I'm going to finish up, and there are some challenges mentioned there, but it's all doable. And also, I would mention for everybody in the room, I think one of my colleagues in London gave some champagne, which is very nice, but we're going to give a free book to with all the benchmarking results that we've done so far. So it's quite a large amount of data, so I promise no data today, but if you really like it, you can have that and just send me an email or give me your card, and I will organize that for you, and you can have that for yourselves. Okay, that's me.
Thank you
done.
very much. Before we move on to the last TED Talk before lunch, questions for Brian? Anybody? Well, I guess you're going to be around for lunch and people can ask you then. So
Yes.
I would like to